Hello, my name is Anja Milosavljevic, and I'm going to be your host today. Today, my guest comes from Argentina. Her name is Sofia, and she's a journalist. So enjoy our conversation. Hi, Sofia, how are you?
Hi, Sanya. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. And as I spoke to a friend earlier, I'm so excited that I have opportunity to do this, to speak to some dear people and some dear friends from all over the world and try to share their stories, try to share their insights and experience regarding not just the COVID and Corona, but their lives and their businesses. So, can you tell us something about yourself? I said that you are a journalist, but what is your educational background? What is your focus right now in your life? You mentioned that you finished some PhD, no? Master studies.
No.
Master studies,
Yes.
okay. I know you're young, okay. And something, just an introduction to your story and to your life.
Sure. So my name is Sofia Terrile. I'm an Argentine. I also have a dual citizenship. I'm also Italian. That's my surname, Terrile. So I'm a journalist. I cover economics and finance for a national newspaper, one of the two biggest in the countries. I also do some participations on TV. I am a regular commentarist, I don't know if that's a word, for a national, I don't know how to say this in English.
Well,
so a TV show and a daily newscast. So that's my job. I cover economics and finance in a country that is a mess in the economy. We have high inflation rates. Like last year was, around 54%. This year, in the past month, we already had 26% inflation. We have currency crisis. We have everything is a total mess, in this country, regarding economics. So I have a very stressful job, as you can imagine. I studied communications and then I did my postgraduate studies in finance so I can get to know a little bit more about, bonds and the stock market. We have a very small stock market, a very, very small stock market. And we have a mess with our sovereign debt. So I've been trying to figure out what's happening with, our economy in these past 6 years that I've been being a journalist for the economics and finance and business section in Argentina.
How come that you have chosen to work in economics and finance? I don't think it's for women or for men, but it's a topic that is very complex and very hard to understand. Sometimes some basic terms in economy are very confusing for me. So how come you decided to specialize in this field?
Right, so the opportunity actually came to me. I knew I wanted to be a journalist, so I knocked on every door I could, hey, can I get a job? Hey, can I get a job? Like that. Because, here journalism works in a quite opaque manner. We don't have LinkedIn job searches. We don't type journalism in LinkedIn and you find a lot of job offers. It's a closed circuit in which you enter by networking and by contact. So I've been knocking on every door ever since I can remember. And then a professor of mine, a teacher of mine during university said, hey, there's an opportunity to work for the business section of this big newspaper of Argentina. Do you want to go for it? And I said, okay, I don't know how to divide numbers. I don't know how to, but I said, all right, let's do this. I'm always up for the challenge, I've been I've been like that for ever since I was born. So I said, all right, let's do it. And at first I had my issues, obviously, because I thought it was, quite a complex topic and actually it was business, but I was 22 years old and I really didn't know much about business. But then I started finding my way, and then for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been doing economy, you know, like macroeconomy. So I've been writing about inflation, currency crisis, and all around the economy. You know, not business anymore, because we've been like in an economic crisis since 2018. So like right now, my profile is a bit harder than it was before, like from the hard and soft parts of journalism. But I've been coping like really well, because I found that I like my job. It's challenging. It forces me to study a lot and to be very like informed. And I really like that part. I found that I'm a bit of a nerd, like within the years. So I like that.
No, I think that's fine to be a nerd. I remember when we tried to arrange this interview, you said, okay, send me the topics so I can prepare myself and do the research. And I was like, okay, Sofia, I will do that. So what are just one more question and then we can move on. What are the measures of your government to ease that currency crisis and inflation? Because I remember we had a similar problem 25 years ago, and it was extremely, our inflation rate was, I don't know, 100% per day. So do they have any measures that are sound, that you can really relate and try to recover economy?
If I have to give an honest answer, I would say we changed governments December last year, and neither the previous government nor this government have the recipe. You know, it's still a mess. I think, you know, because I don't know, we still didn't find our own way. Because, for example, in 2018, the previous government asked for a loan from the IMF. You know, to make things right and to start, but then everything, like, we had a big currency crisis. The peso, our national currency, devaluated a lot. We had big inflation. I think it's a matter of trust. You know, in our currency, we have like a bi-monetary economy without looking for it. I think there's a matter of trust in our currency and in our institutions that right now is like, it's bad, and we still haven't, if I have to be honest, we still haven't found the solution. I mean, we have some solutions, like short-term solutions, like, for example, we set maximum prices. I don't know if you say that in English. Like, we set these standard prices for food and for, you know, first necessity articles.
Basic stuff.
Articles, yes. But then those are like short-term measurements, you know. I think we would need, and everyone here thinks we would need something more than short-term measurements. If we've been like an inflationary economy for so many years now, we don't grow like since 2011. You know, it's getting like, I don't want to say worse each year, because we may have some years that are better than the year before, but then we're like this, you know. It's difficult.
So how did COVID and Corona influenced your vulnerable economy, your economy that is already in a problem? How do you see, you and your government, do you see an opportunity in this pandemic, or is it just I don't know, a shortcut to even worse economy state?
Right. So we had a lot of macroeconomic issues before the pandemic. Actually, we had to, this government started its government in December 2019, knowing that it would have to renegotiate our sovereign debt, because we had a big debt and no dollars to pay for this debt. So it had already had a big challenge. And I mean, we entered default. Like, we've been a country in default for a few weeks until the government finally arranged with bondholders. But we already had a mess, you know, before we entered the pandemic. Once we entered the pandemic, this only got worse, you know. So I'm sorry, I'm being like, I think I'm the pessimist in this podcast.
No, you're not. We are actually trying to share honest stories.
Yeah.
It would be
so
only if someone from China tells me that their economy is recovering, I would say, okay, I can believe you. But if somebody from, especially from the third countries or a country like Serbia, when they're full of, you know, like we are recovering, well, it's not that possible, and it's not possible to do that so fast.
Yeah. So up until now, we have around 1.3 million Argentines infected with COVID-19, even though we had, as I told you before when we were chatting before this podcast, I told you that we had quite a strict quarantine for around 8 months or so. And we are right now in social distancing measurements ever since like the 10th of this month, So even though we had this strict lockdown and quarantine with many activities still closed, we had 1.3 million Argentines infected with COVID and around 37,000 people that died. We are right now like the 8th country with the most COVID infected people. I don't know if you understood that. Like with them,
of course.
With them, yeah. So it hasn't been easy on the COVID side, but also it hasn't been easy on the economy side. You know, because for example, let me give you some numbers. In 6 months in Argentina, poverty has gone up from 35.5% to 40.9%. That means around 4 every 10 Argentines are poor. So that's a very strong number to start with. You know, around 18.5 million Argentines are poor. We have around 45 million Argentines in the whole country. So you can imagine how bad this is. And then, as I told you before, from January to October, we already had 26 point something inflation. That's a big inflation, you know, for a country that well, it has a lot of problems, but I mean, it shouldn't have that inflation, you know. And also we have some currency issues, you know, inflation rates, as I told you before, rising. And in the middle of this, we had a negotiation for our sovereign debt. And right now we are negotiating with the IMF because of the loan we contracted in 2018 to solve our crisis. So it is expected that some of the measurements that I can tell you now that our government, applied for the economy to get better, some of those measurements are right now disappearing. So I think we will now see the crudest, the worst side of the pandemic.
So what happened to, or let me just rephrase, do you have a large number of small and medium enterprises in Argentina? Are they the holder of economy development?
Yes, that's interesting because around 9 out of 10 jobs are sustained by small and medium enterprises. You know, it's the backbone of our economy. It's like it's the backbone of our economy. You know, we have big companies in Argentina, but actually we have, I don't know, thousands of smaller companies that are the backbone of this country and that actually, you know, struggle the most when things like this happen, you know, like big economic crisis and actually a pandemic that came on top of it.
It's like a reverse cherry on top. It's like something that you don't want. So what happened to the small scale, to the small and medium sized enterprises in this pandemic? Plus, I suppose that your borders were closed or open. They were closed.
Our borders right now, we have some special flights, but. We had our borders closed for a lot of months. We then started doing like special flights for repatriation flights for bringing people back to Argentina. We then had some special flights. So if you want to travel, you have to sign like I don't know how to call it in English. You have to compromise yourself that you will return and then do quarantine. And right now, for example, in the city of Buenos Aires, the borders are open to receive tourism from other provinces or from other countries, but the government has announced that everyone that wants to enter the city of Buenos Aires has to do COVID test.
A PCR test.
PCR test. That's it. Yes, I didn't know if that was a word in
Yes.
English as well.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, you have to do a PCR test if you want to enter Buenos Aires. So I'd say it isn't easy to travel, and borders have been very closed for a lot of months. But for example, if you look at it from an economic side, as I told you before, we had shortage of dollars, right? We don't have dollars in our economy, and that's a big issue here in Argentina. So tourism is a big form of where these dollars go. You know, we have a big deficit because of tourism here in Argentina, because more Argentines leave the country than international tourists that enter the country. Yeah. So we have an issue there, because I think the crisis would be worse, even worse, if we had our borders open. I don't remember what was your original question, because then we got like distracted by the
no, never mind.
thing.
But I was just wondering, like, if you have borders that are closed, like you cannot have tourists from the outside, from other countries. Plus, the export business can also suffer because the procedures are maybe more complex and then stringent rather than before. So that everything influences the economy. So that was my question, and you basically answered my question. So yeah.
No, that's interesting that actually you mentioned the exports and import things, because I don't want to get too technical, but here in Argentina we have like five foreign exchanges. We have like the official dollar, and then we have some financial dollars, and then we have the black market dollar. So the difference between the official the official exchange rate and the parallel market, the informal market, went up to 150% this year. So yeah, we have like the official foreign exchange rate is like they have stepped on it, so it doesn't generate more inflation. But it is difficult for us Argentines to access this official dollar. For example, can you
explain more?
Yes. Yes, sure. So, for example, I cannot buy official dollars because there has been a restriction, for everyone. For example, in my case, it was because of a condition of my work. But then there is a list of around 10 to 11 conditions that take you out of the official dollar market. So, for example, 4 million Argentines bought dollars in like September, for example, and then they started doing these restrictions, right? So people don't access them. So banks now estimate that from 4 million Argentines that bought dollars in August, September, right now we would have around 700,000 people. So, the official market is like this, like very, very small. And then the parallel market, the informal market, and the financial dollar market are getting bigger each day. And by bigger, I mean they're getting a lot of demand, So that's why the prices are going up and going up and going up. And I was mentioning this because when you see this, when you see parallel exchange rates going up, people that export and import goods start to think, like calculate, this parallel dollar is going up. The official dollar will have to catch up anytime soon. So they are speculating that there will be a devaluation of the peso. So that behavior turns out that it generates more imports because people like freak out, importer wants to access the official dollar, and they say, okay, so if I have to pay this like 1 peso today or 7 pesos, just to set an example, tomorrow I will accelerate my imports and bring more imports to the country. But then when you export, you have to turn that dollars that you generate into pesos, right? Here in Argentina. So imagine if I'm an exporter. I don't know if you say exporter, but if I'm a person that exports, right? If I can get 7 pesos instead of 1, I will hold, I will wait, and I will turn my dollars into pesos, like when this devaluation that I'm imagining occurs. So this generated a mess in our, foreign, in our trade.
So what is it's a silly question, but do you know what is the most imported good in Argentina?
It's like machinery, machinery. And we export a lot of, we are a food producer. So we are a very, we export soybeans and I don't know how to say this in English, but cereals and all that. Okay. 3 out of $10 that we generate come from the food production.
From food production.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we have some wine here in Serbia that come from Argentina, like Malbec.
Yes.
And I think some fruits come here from, but I'm not sure.
That may be true because we are a big apple producer. But those, we call them regional economies. The wine, the apples. For example, the wine is on the west side of the country. And they have a nice climate and the sun is nice there. So they produce wine. But I would say it's a bit of a niche export. It's not our biggest export. Because our biggest export would be like cereals, then the automotive industry here. We have a quite a strong automotive industry, and we have an agreement with Brazil. We have a very strong neighbor. Brazil is a very pushing economy, like it's strong. It has a lot of population, and we have an agreement with them, so we exchange cars with them. So the automotive industry is actually like a big exports in Argentina, then plastic, then we have oil, we have a big, we have a lot of natural resources. I mean, it's a good country. I like my country. It has a lot of benefits, but then it's just a mess in the economic side.
I know. I can say a similar thing for Serbia. Like when you look at the map, I know, but when you look at the map of Serbia, you have like huge plain on the north of the country. Then you have a lot of rivers. Then you have mountains and woods, and we only don't have sea. So we basically have you have everything you need to produce, like let's say food. Would it be too much if I ask, did your government help in any way? Small or big enterprises during the pandemic, during the time when they couldn't make income or profit.
Right. So let me do some disclaimer first. I'm a journalist, so I will always be critical, of the things the government does. This does not have to do with my ideology. In my country, luckily I can express, my opinions freely. Having said that, I would say the government has taken some measurements on a more social side. For example, it has set some subsidies for companies so they can pay their wages. It has set how do you call it? Like an emergency fund for people that can. Let me get this straight. So in Argentina, we have, as I said before, very high poverty rates, around 40%. And then we have around a third of the economy that is informal, right? So imagine being an informal worker. You work and you receive cash for your work, but you have to move along to get this cash. You do not get that money in a bank. You do not get that money via electronic payment, you know? So imagine being, I don't know, a construction worker that works in the informal economy, and then lockdown gets here. You know, that was the worst part, I think, of this lockdown, because there were a lot of people that lost their jobs, that did not have an income, that depended on moving around the cities to get an income. So the government tried to do some emergency funds, you know, it set up like these subsidies for companies. I would say those are the two biggest measurements that they did. One is called the Program of Assistance to Work and Production, and the other one is called Emergency Family Income, right? So even though we had these measurements, unemployment has gone up. I mean, it has gone from 10.4% in the first quarter to 13.1% in the second quarter. And let me tell you something quite crazy about my country. There is a prohibition to fire people. So
sorry, can you repeat? Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah. So you cannot fire people.
Oh,
you cannot fire people. You cannot fire people. You know, there's a prohibition. It's prohibited.
So what do they do if they want?
Yeah.
No. What would be the solution for that?
Yeah. So there is actually no solution. That's why they came up with the subsidies, so they can pay for most of the employees' salaries. You know, because there were companies that their utilities came to zero during these months. So they came up with these subsidies. And then I would say many companies just tried to, you know, close its doors, disappear, and then resolve it in the justice, you know, in the court.
In the court.
Because it's a mess. It's a mess. You know, I've been writing a lot of articles about closing business, and closing business in Argentina has become very difficult because of this. Because you cannot, you know, fire people. You cannot, adjust your cost when there's a
problem or a crisis.
So, yeah, so this has been an issue, you know, and even though we have a prohibition to fire people, it's still, unemployment has still gone up. And that's why I'm telling you that we have short-term measurements that have helped up until now. But we are right now negotiating with the IMF. And you know, if you know a bit about the IMF, you must know that they do not give money freely. They ask for things in exchange. And these things mean like taking measurements that are not nice, you know, are not happy for people. So I'm guessing that my guess is that we still haven't seen the worst part of the COVID crisis and the economic crisis, because we still have everything so regulated, artificially regulated, that we have to see we still have to see the crudest side of this, I think.
The ugly face of pandemic and crisis. So what do you expect? When is this going to end? Is it next year? Is it in 5 years? You as a citizen of Buenos Aires.
Yeah. So I would say my utopic wishful thinking. I would say this country needs a good political arrangement so that we can establish long-term policies. For example, we will not print a lot of money. Even though we need it, we will try to be restricted to our budget. You know, those fiscal policies that are serious and sustainable. But this is a mess. We have like a big, political confrontations, you know, like the US, like we are seeing right now in the US. We have had this like for a lot of years in Argentina, like political tensions. So I don't think this will happen. But let me tell you that this year, the economy will go down like around 11.9%. This is what private estimations are around right now. And then next year, we will recover some of that, like 5.5, I think, something like that. We will recover some of that. That is the protection. But then I think we would need like a few more years to get on track. And then, as I told you before, some stronger measurements than, you know, stepping on prices and prohibiting things, and, you know, like sustainable long-term policy is what my country is lacking right now. Siri, sorry. My phone.
No. That's real life. That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about the state of entrepreneurship in Argentina? Like, are they in some industries more often, or in some other industries, or like IT or food sector? Where do you see the most of entrepreneurial, spirit or entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So we have a very entrepreneurial spirit in Argentina. Do you know, Sanya, what a unicorn is? I imagine you know what a unicorn is.
Of course, I know.
Yeah, so there are companies that are valuated in more than $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So so we have 5 of these. You know, it's like for a macro complicated country, we still have a very big entrepreneurial spirit. So we have a big e-commerce, and by big I mean one that is competing against Amazon, that it's called Mercado Libre. And that is it's a regional e-commerce that was born in Argentina, and that's a great example of how things can scale even from a complicated economy. Then we have like a software company that works for a lot of countries, I don't know, many countries and big clients. Then we have a cybersecurity company. Then we have another e-commerce that is a unicorn, and then we have a big regional OTA. Is it that how you call it in English? Like the tourism platforms, you know, to get an airplane ticket and to get hotels and all that.
So, okay.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
I know what do you mean. Like booking and some
like
other.
Booking. But it is you can book airplane tickets and hotels. Everything, like you can book your trip there. So those are our.
And it's only for South America or for Argentina? Is it?
No. They are all regional. I would say they are regional. They are regional companies, you know, because, for example, the software companies work for a lot of countries beside of Argentina. You know, here we have a very good service economy. We have good timing, because we are GMT -3 or +3, I don't remember, but we have like I think it's -3, and we have like a good timing zone for both Europe and then the US,
for Asia,
in the West Coast, and in the, so we have a good timing zone, and then we have one of the best English speaking populations in the whole region, because we have good bilingual schools and we learn a lot of English at school. So we have a good service economy that works offshore. For example, we have hubs in the service economy for the biggest banks, I don't know, in the world. Like JP Morgan has a service hub here in Argentina. The software, as I said before, the software companies are very, very, they push a lot of here in the country. Yes, and so I would say we have a very good entrepreneurial spirit, and let me tell you something more. We are in constant economic crisis. The worst one, the most recent one was in 2001. We had a big devaluation. We went from a dollar equals 1 peso to 4 pesos equals $1. So you can imagine the mess that generated in our country. And I would say this constant economic crisis and these constant issues get people to be more creative, So that's why I think we have like an interesting entrepreneurial spirit, even though the macroeconomic conditions do not help us.
Or allow them to grow and to show all their potentials. But do you know of any successful story from food sector? Like, do you have any...
From the food sector?
Yeah, innovative... Because I remember when we were, I think in... was it Minneapolis? I'm not sure. We went to that small street market. You bought some artisanal cheese and some artisanal spreads.
Yeah, North Carolina. We were
North Carolina. Okay.
Yeah. We went
you're younger than
every
me.
time. Yeah. I remember we drank some wine and some cheese there. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember. I also remember that. Those were some of my favorite memories. I'm joking, of course. But you mentioned that, and you bought even something like a souvenir for your family. But do you have something like that in Argentina, like some innovative products that come from food sector?
Yes, I would say we do have that. I imagine Argentina is actually a very innovative country and a very creative country, as I was saying before. We have good writers, we have good theater, players. We have a nice gastronomic scene. The city of Buenos Aires is spectacular. I can say it is spectacular. I've been all around the world and I didn't find a city like Buenos Aires. It is, I don't know, it's like, it's spectacular. I don't have any other word to say. It's a fun city to be in. We have a really nice life. We spend a lot of time drinking wine and chatting, and it's a very animated scene we have in Buenos Aires, and in some cities of Argentina, like Córdoba in the center of the country, and then Mendoza, the wine making region. Those are like nice people that have fun, and so a very creative economy, as I was saying before. So some of the, I would say, some of the most innovative food companies come from Argentina, because we have, let me get this straight, we have a big agricultural sector. So a lot of companies are working for that agricultural sector. Like, we have from satellite companies that are born in Argentina, big satellite companies. You can imagine, like, one is called Satellogic, and it does nano satellites, little satellites, low-cost satellites for the agricultural and for everything, for the weather and for everything, to look at the earth from above. And then we have like some smaller entrepreneurs. I remember we talked about this when we were together, but for example, people that are innovating with cricket flour, for example, people that are innovating with plant-based things in a country where meat, asado, the barbecue is like one of the biggest rituals in our country. We still have a lot of plant-based creativity here in Argentina, I would say, the food industry and the food companies. And let me tell you something more, because I'm remembering as we speak, the food sector, the gastronomic sector, let me focus on them. They were very creative during the pandemic. They started selling like future tickets so that you could spent them after the pandemic ended. They sold boxes with instructions and with decorating for your living room so that you could have a dinner party in your living room while you were in lockdown. Our referees, I don't know, that's not the name. Like the people that are pushing for this sector, like chefs, bartenders, they were very, very present during the pandemic, like teaching people how to cook. You know, there's a big cook here in Argentina that is called Narda Lepes, that she did like Instagram lives, and you could tell her like, hey, listen, I have, I don't know, banana and flour and then spaghetti. What can I make with this? and she invented recipes, you know, and she's a big star. I mean, she's on TV, she has her own restaurant, but people here were very, very close to each other during quarantine, and I would say the food sector is actually very, very innovative here in Argentina. We have a very good pasta making people. Because
I know, and I follow some of people that produce pasta in Argentina, and I love them. I love watching their stories and their photos and their posts, whatever. So
I will send you some more, because during quarantine, a lot of people started making also their own pasta from home, and they started selling it, and it was like a great thing because we had, I don't know, agnolotis of sweet potato, you know, like crazy combinations and colors and things, because we, besides of the barbecue, asado, the meat, we have a very strong Italian tradition. Also, we have Bolivian tradition. We have a lot of tradition from all around Latin America, but also a big European tradition. And that's why we all eat, in Buenos Aires at least, we eat a lot of pasta, we eat a lot of tiramisu. That is like my favorite dessert ever. Yes. And we do like this as well. Yes.
Okay, so we came almost to the end of this conversation. Can you just share your personal experience or your personal emotional status regarding this pandemic and quarantine and not be able to, I don't know, see with your friends and your family, and just share a message, share something with us. Just what would be your message to people who are listening this podcast?
Sure. So I will try to, I'm inventing it right now. I'm thinking about it right now. So I would say I'm a big extrovert, and this has been like an issue for me, you know, this year, to spend some time on my own and to do things by myself, because I always existed around others, you know. I always, my dining room, I opened my dining room every week so that people could come to my dining room and have dinner with other people and get to know other people. It was like a networking space that I opened every week in my apartment. And then I did, you know, reunions and gatherings and meetings every week. I was the one to start the meeting, you know, like, hey, we can gather. So this year, for me, it has been quite a journey, a personal journey. For example, I started focusing more on myself. I would say it was a year of self-care. I learned how to cook. I didn't know how to cook because I spent so much time in meetings and dining, you know, outside in restaurants. And as I said, Buenos Aires is very stimulating. So there's always a new restaurant to try. It's like the New York gastronomic scene, you know. So I didn't know how to cook, and I'm 28 years old, and I'm not saying this with, you know, with pride. I do not take pride on this. So I learned how to cook. I started doing a lot of sport because I didn't pay attention to my body at all, you know, because I have always been like, I didn't have any weight issues, so I did not make any sport, but that was bad for my mental health. So I started like checking on my mental health, like what should I do to get this better? And I started running. I mean, I didn't run anything, you know, I didn't even run the, you know, the bus. It was like, so I started running. I learned how to cook. I upskilled. I improved my makeup skills. Because I had to do my own makeup. I had to do my own makeup because I work on TV, and I had to do my own makeup because we have to do like this Zoom TV right now, you know.
Oh.
So I had to do my own makeup. So I upskilled my makeup. And then I would say it was a year to focus on myself, on my studying. I studied the postgraduate studies in finance, and it was, let me say this, that I do not want to sound frivolous because I've been one of the privileged Argentines that could spend quarantine with a job and that could spend quarantine with a fixed income and that could spend quarantine in a space that has a garden because I live in a small apartment in Buenos Aires, but then I came to my parents' house to spend some days here and I have a garden and a space where I can relax. That is a privilege. And that is why I cannot complain, you know, about this year. And I think it's a year, I read something like this morning that said, this year is a year not to set goals or to think about what you missed, but to be grateful for what you have. And that is my mindset, you know, like I'm grateful for what I've had this year, even if it wasn't the best year.
It will pass anyway.
Yes. Yes.
So what would be your message? What would you share with people who are listening this?
Right. So I would say again that just do not focus on your goals, the goals that you missed. Do not focus on what you haven't done, the trip that didn't result, the wedding that didn't come because of the pandemic. I would say be grateful, be really grateful for what you have. And I have a personal tip that I write down things, you know, every once in a while. I write down like I'm happy for this, I want to change this, and writing is a nice exercise to remember that you do have a lot of things to be grateful and happy for. And I don't want to sound like, you know, happy toxic, you know, the happy toxic people that are like, you can't be sad, you can't be like, you can be sad, you can be sad.
That's perfectly normal. Yeah.
Yes.
I know.
I be angry.
I agree with you. I go around and tell people, well, you cannot be happy all the time, or you cannot smile all the time, because it's either you have a Botox or something is wrong with you. If you're always smiling and feeling happy, it's perfectly normal to be down and to be blue.
Absolutely.
And that's
that's my message. If you want to be sad, but then remember that you can be grateful for some things, and that I think we are the privileged ones that could sustain a job, and you know.
I know.
That's it.
I know. Thank you, Sofia. Thank you so much. Thank you for accepting to participate in this project. So, dear people of the world, this was Sofia from Argentina, and this Mondopreneur podcast is about just sharing stories of people who live around the world. The whole project is supported by US Embassy in Belgrade. And if you want, you can always follow us on social media like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then you can listen to us and watch us on YouTube and listen to us on audio platforms that are available here. So be safe, stay good, and stay in good health. See you in a week.